Markets are still adjusting to what looks like a temporary decline in energy risk. But the satellite data, the naval maneuvers, they tell a completely different, a more fundamental story. What we're seeing isn't just a power vacuum. It's it it's an intentional global shift from, multilateral agreements and the rule of law toward unilateral force and strategic deal making.
This is Neural Pulse. Let's analyze. Okay,
Okay.
so let's start with Ukraine, because the immediate news is this meeting between Zelensky and the incoming U.S. president. And it's happening right as this so-called 20-point peace plan has been leaked. Meanwhile, on the ground, the situation is, well, it's just brutal. Russia recently launched something like 500 drones and 40 missiles. In a single night, we're hearing a third of Kyiv is without heat.
And that tactical reality really forces you to look at this leaked plan very, very seriously. If it's accurate, it represents a dramatic turn from Kyiv's original goal of reclaiming all its territory.
And the specific details are key here. The core of the plan, as we understand it, is the establishment of a formal demilitarized zone, a DMZ, one that would be set right along the current line of contact.
Which would include the Donbas region and, critically, the area around the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant.
So this isn't peace, it's something else.
Exactly. You have to frame this not as a peace deal, but as let's call it the Korean peninsulaization of the conflict. It's the structural, long-term fixation of a divided state.
Yeah.
A hot war turning into a frozen, decades-long stalemate.
But the paradox here is the economics of it, right?
It is. The DMZ would cement the functional loss of Ukraine's industrial and resource heartland in the Donbas. So while the incoming U.S. administration might be seeking this outcome to, cut the U.S. financial burden, this result guarantees that Ukraine will require massive long-term Western financial support just to remain a viable state.
Right. So that willingness to use force to just redraw maps in Europe, it leads us directly to the boldest application of force we're seeing in the Americas right now. The operational reality is that the U.S. military has initiated what is, for all intents and purposes, an effective naval blockade against Venezuela in the Caribbean. They are using force. Reports mention seizing and even physically attacking tankers belonging to the Shadow Fleet.
And they're hitting ships that are not even on the official sanctions list.
Exactly. We've seen reports on the tanker Centuries, for example, which was not on the U.S. Treasury's SDN list. And you can see the market reaction. WTI and Brent crude, they spiked vertically right after those tanker seizure reports on December 23rd. But that's since trended downwards, mostly due to the competing narrative of the potential Ukraine deal and global demand fears.
This is essentially war without a declaration, and it raises some really serious international law concerns. But the key signal here, the strategic shift, is how the U.S. is enforcing this. They're moving from a list-based sanction strategy
to a behavior-based one.
Precisely. They're targeting vessels based purely on suspicious actions. Things like cutting off their AIS signal, deceptive routing. It doesn't matter if they're on an official list or not.
What's the implication of that shift?
The implication is a chilling effect. It instantly increases the perceived risk premium for all shipping across the Caribbean basin, not just the Shadow Fleet. It's designed to structurally increase energy transport costs, and frankly, it really heightens the risk of an accidental military confrontation. The rules of engagement are now subjective.
So as the U.S. is leveraging maritime power, China is leveraging its economic power to strike back at the foundations of U.S. security and innovation. And this is a very calculated play. China's immediate retaliation for that $10 billion Taiwan arms sale. They've sanctioned 20 U.S. defense companies and their executives. They named the traditional giants Northrop Grumman, Boeing Defense, but they also specifically targeted the emerging defense AI company Endural Industries.
And the calculation there is, well, it's highly sophisticated. They targeted the defense arm of Boeing, focusing on the St. Louis production hub. That lets them avoid directly damaging the huge commercial aviation relationship, which is centered in Seattle. It's calculated coercion.
But what's the actual impact of sanctioning a company like Anduril, which has almost zero exposure to the Chinese market?
Well, that's what we call the sanction paradox. For a new company like Anduril, being placed on Beijing's blacklist, it acts as a badge of honor. It just signals their strategic importance to the U.S. defense innovation base. Counterintuitively, it probably attracts more Western investment.
So it's more of a political signal?
Primarily, yes.
And that calculated approach shifts to the cyber domain. We're seeing this joint warning from CSIS and the NSA about Chinese state-sponsored malware they're calling Brickstorm. And the target here it's the heart of so much infrastructure, VMware vCenter servers.
Right. And for anyone who doesn't live in a server room, vCenter is the central control system. If you control vCenter, you control everything running underneath it.
And the malware is stealthy. It's using encrypted WebSockets and DNS over HTTPS. Why is that important?
It's important because it allows the malware to blend in perfectly with legitimate traffic. It makes it incredibly hard to detect. It's designed for long-term, deep persistence.
So this isn't just about stealing data.
No, absolutely not. This is pre-positioning.
Okay.
It's about establishing the capabilities now to cause maximum destruction later, shutting down power grids, logistics, communications at a time of conflict. The paradox of modern IT is that our drive for efficiency has created these massive single points of failure, which is exactly what Brickstorm is designed to exploit.
Okay, so from those deep network threats, let's look outward to the Red Sea, where physical alignments are rapidly changing the balance of power. And this is a major diplomatic game changer. Israel has just become the first nation to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign state, full diplomatic ties.
And that immediately drew strong condemnation from Somalia, Egypt, Turkey, which tells you how significant this is.
So what's the strategic calculus?
It's razor sharp. Somaliland sits directly on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. For Israel, this is a critical move. It gives them a logistics and intelligence foothold to counteract Houthi maritime threats and secure access to its southern port of Eilat.
And there's a bigger picture here, too.
A much bigger picture. This acts as a strategic check against Egypt. Israel is indirectly supporting Ethiopia, which desperately needs Somaliland's Berbera port access in their ongoing Nile water disputes. It completely rewrites the security map of the Horn of Africa.
Speaking of rewriting things, let's turn to the financial markets in Tokyo. The Bank of Japan made an historic move, raising their policy rate to 0.75%. That's a 30-year high. And yet the yen immediately weakened further.
A total paradox.
Right, and the numbers tell the story. Japanese inflation, the CPI, is sitting at roughly 2.9%. So you take that new policy rate of 0.75%, and the real interest rate is still deeply negative, approximately minus 2.15%.
And that's the core issue. This market reaction is less about the size of the rate hike and more about a fundamental loss of confidence in Japan's growth potential. It's the Japan passing narrative. That negative real rate means capital flight risks persist. The pressure stays on the currency.
And what does that mean for the domestic Japanese economy?
It means real domestic pain, especially for small and medium businesses. Many took out those 0-0 pandemic loans, and now they're facing repayment combined with rising borrowing costs. But they're not getting the benefit of a stronger yen to reduce their import costs. It's a recipe for a wave of bankruptcies.
So we've covered everything from the frozen conflict of a Ukrainian DMZ and the hard power used in the Caribbean to surgical sanctions and the financial paradox in Tokyo. What stands out as the core takeaway for 2026?
The crucial observation, the thread connecting all of this, is the overwhelming priority of political and security logic over pure economic rationality. You see it everywhere. Japan hiking rates only to see capital flee. The U.S. imposing a costly blockade while trying to tame inflation. Pure economics is no longer the primary decision-making driver. Geopolitical tension is now the fundamental cost of doing business, and we are entering a phase where crisis is the rule, not the exception. The task now is to build strategies that operate under this premise of constant turbulence.
Insightful analysis for a complex end of the year.
Neural pulse. Clarity in a complex world. See you tomorrow.